Nice to meet you.
Very good to meet you.
Okay. So, did you see the press conference?
I've been watching the press conference all morning. I've also been getting lots of messages from my colleagues in Japan who are there right now. So yeah, I've been keeping a close eye on the events as they unfold.
Okay. So, when you visited Johnny's associate, they refused to talk and drove you away. But finally, they held a press conference today. What were the things that you were paying attention to from the conference?
So today I welcome the fact that there's been an acknowledgement of Johnny Kitagawa's crimes, and there has finally been a real acknowledgement that Johnny Kitagawa sexually abused many of the young people who came through Johnny and Associates. I think that in itself is progress. I also welcome the reference to compensation. I know the details of this are sketchy at the moment. I also welcome that Julie Fujishima has apologized for Johnny and Associates and their lack of engagement in the past. However, I'm really cynical about what has been announced today because all the way along, all the way through this story, we've seen for many, many years, and certainly since the documentary Predator, The Secret Scandal of J-Pop came out, we've seen that Johnny and Associates have been reacting to the press rather than being proactive about their wrongdoing. And so I think today there is certainly some progress, but there are many, many questions that remain unanswered.
They announced that Julie is stepping down and Noriyuki Higashiyama, and he's one of their own actors, not from outside, will be new president.
So I don't know a great deal about Noriyuki Higashiyama. What I do know is that he's one of the former Johnnies, and he's been very successful within the organization. I would suggest that it's a problem if the person taking over has been part of the organization for a long time. Now, there are also allegations, as you'll be aware, about the conduct of Higashiyama. And so I don't think they're starting out with a clean slate. I think if they're going to bring someone else into the company, it needs to be someone that hasn't been associated with the company for many years. We'll also be aware, and you'll also be aware, that whilst Julie Fujishima is standing down as the CEO of the company, she still remains the 100% share owner. I think it's very problematic that the person who benefits financially mostly from the success of the artists and from the Johnny's pop groups, the person that benefits is still and will remain Julie Fujishima. I watched the press conference and I saw that she was upset and that she cried and she apologized. And she said at one point that she wasn't aware of what her uncle had done. And she referred to him as a father figure. She said, I saw him as my father. I have a really hard time processing this because actually the rumors about Johnny Kitagawa have been around for many, many years. For everyone that watched Predator, for everyone that watched the documentary, one thing you may not be aware of is whilst I was in Tokyo and I was there this time last year, actually, we also filmed when we tried to approach the home of Julie Fujishima. So I went to her apartment. I rang the bell on her intercom, and I spoke to someone in there in the home. I believe I spoke to Julie over the intercom, and I visited there twice, and she wouldn't let me in. And this was her home, and this came after multiple emails, multiple calls going via the Johnny and Associates press office. Julie Fujishima had every single opportunity to engage with the allegations. And even prior to the documentary, as you'll be aware, the newspaper Bunshin has been reporting on this story for many decades, since the early 2000s. And so Julie Fujishima has had every opportunity to engage with these allegations. Today, for her to be very upset, for her to be crying and apologizing, and ultimately resigning as the CEO of the company, I think it's too little and I think it's too late.
Do you think they can prevent child sex abuse and not repeat the same problem by changing the president?
I really hope there will be a major cultural shift at Johnny and Associates. I have a problem though, because in the same press conference, it was announced that this will stop being a family business. At the same time, we know that Julie Fujishima and Higashiyama are childhood friends. They've known each other for a very long time. So how can you say on one hand, this will stop being a family business, but then hand over all this power to Higashiyama, who himself has been part of this organization for a very long time? I would hope and I would appeal to the everyone with power at Johnny and Associates to have a complete cultural shift from the top down. We know that the culture of a company is set and established at a senior level. And so I think a more radical approach is needed. I also think it is beyond contempt. It is a terrible situation that the main financial beneficiary of the success of Johnny and Associates will continue to be Julie Fujishima, because she was aware of these allegations for a very, very long time and chose not to engage. And I think that's a real problem.
They announced that they will not change the name Journeys and Associates Journeys. What do you think about it?
I think this is a really terrible idea. It's called Johnny and Associates. And, I remember walking into the office and seeing this huge image of Johnny Kitagawa's face in the reception area. The whole company for many decades has been branded around this man who we know exploited many, many individuals. So this man, he doesn't have a criminal conviction because, of course, he's now dead. But finally today, it has been admitted that he was a pedophile and he was sexually abusing boys. How can you have a company based around an individual who is known to have committed these terrible acts? We must always think about the survivors of abuse. If you're a survivor of abuse and you're in Japan today and you are seeing the success of a company that is named after Johnny Kitagawa, and you are seeing his face is still used in the reception of the company, that is an insult. And I think that's a problem. So I think it is a terrible idea to continue calling the company Johnny and Associates.
Why do you think they took 6 months to hold a conference?
I really believe that 6 months is not a long time to hold an investigation. But I believe all the way through this, the company, Johnny and Associates, have been responding to the press. So if we look at this, whilst the documentary was in production, the company had every opportunity to respond. They chose not to because I believe they were hoping the story would go away. It was only after the brave survivors of abuse came forward and spoke out and then continued to speak out that the company responded. Furthermore, more recently, as you'll be aware, the United Nations visited Japan and began conducting an investigation into workplace exploitation in the entertainment industry. Once again, this brought the issue into public discourse and into the press. At every single stage, Judy Fujishima and Johnny and Associates have been responding to how the story has been covered. And I believe this is no different. I believe if the press hadn't have picked up this story, there wouldn't have been a press conference today. And actually, if the press stopped covering this story, I believe it is possible the culture in which this abuse happened will continue. So I appeal to all my colleagues, I appeal to my peers in Japan and journalists on the ground to continue pushing and continue covering this story, because it's still an important story and there's still survivors out there who contact me, on my phone, on social media, people who have not spoken in the public domain. There are still survivors who have not been acknowledged, who have not been offered compensation, who have not even spoken to their own families about what happened. And that is an unforgivable situation. It's a terrible situation. So we need to keep going.
We are media. We have to change ourselves and we have to change the society, I think. As for Journeys and Associate, What do you pay attention to from now on?
I believe that the press in Japan, I have a lot of respect for Japanese society, and I have a lot of love for Japanese society and Japanese culture. I think the press around the world and the press within Japan has a duty primarily to serve the public. I'm a great believer in the concept of public service broadcasting. So the idea that the press in itself is a way to push civilized society forward. And so I believe it is the duty of every single journalist, every single broadcaster, every single person that works at a newspaper or online or has any outlets to follow the story of people who are powerless and to hold the powerful to account. In the story of Johnny and Associates, we know it's very clear now that the reason Johnny Kitagawa was not challenged was because he had all the power, and actually his company continues to have power today. That's why he was not challenged. That's why so many journalists and so many editors were frightened of taking on this story, because as we know, Johnny and Associates, the company, even till very recently, would rule with an iron fist. So essentially, if someone printed something that was negative about the company, or if someone said something on TV that was negative about the company, they had the ability to take away their talent, to say, no, you can't interview this person, you can't interview this star, this celebrity will not be on your network. All the power was in the hands of Johnny and Associates. And ultimate power, as we know, is a corrupting force. So I appeal to all of the press to hold the powerful account. That is the most important thing. And perhaps that is one good thing that can come out of this situation.
Do you have any suggestion to improve Japanese associate or Japan society?
There's two very big questions there. So for Johnny and Associates, what I ask for is complete transparency. I would appeal today directly to Julie Fujishima. She has my contact details. I still want to sit down and interview her. I still want to meet her. I still want to speak to her about what happened. So I appeal to her directly. I think as a company, there needs to be a complete cultural shift. There needs to be a real change in how the company is run, how it's organized. And I know we've heard about compensation for survivors of abuse, but I want to know more detail. We've got to acknowledge that there are many survivors who haven't even told their families what happened. And so this is going to be a very, very long process. The second part of that question about Japanese society, I love and respect Japanese society. I believe that in every society around the world, the powerful must be held accountable. We should never be afraid to ask questions. We should never be afraid to hold people accountable. And the same is true in the UK, and the same is true in Japan. We have to be able to ask questions and hold people accountable. And I appeal to journalists in particular to please do their jobs. Please have the difficult conversations with their own editors, with their own bosses, and please continue to hold the powerful accountable. That is the job of a journalist, and that's what public service broadcasting is all about.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much. ありがとうございます. Thank you.